culture looks like now. I have my values booklet here.
There you go.
I have it always on my desk. I don't know if you're very good at innovating, actually. It's something that we're trying to get better at. But it's really difficult to innovate in startups when you have always 6 months, 7 months to provide the next level of growth. So I didn't feel we were innovative. We were constantly improving, but I don't think we're bringing something completely. Well, I think it was easier in the sense of our industry because no one was doing anything in it. The constant improvement is great at the start. Lots of the growth comes from maybe adding more makes, adding more supply and so on. That's a part where we didn't grow as fast because we didn't invest in the bigger bets. But I think you need to think very systematically about, yes, you need a lot of short-term bets, but figure out what you feel comfortable, but you need to have the one longer-term bet.
Hello, David. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling?
Very well, very well. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well, David. So before we kick off, David, let us know who you are, how your journey looks like in the tech industry, what you're currently doing, and anything else listeners would be interested to know about you.
Great. My name is David Santoro. I'm the CTO and co-founder of CarWow. It's a car-changing marketplace. We founded CarWow roughly 13 years ago, and I was the first engineer there. And before that, I worked for other web companies through consultancies, typically. I used to work for ThoughtWorks. So I've kind of seen a few companies, how they work, how the engineering works, how the culture is. That was some of the inspiration for me to start my own company.
That's a very, very interesting, you're saying this. So you basically felt other businesses and you were like, you know what, I think I could create a business which is just so much better environment-wise.
Well, yes, I think for me, I saw many mistakes repeated, and very probably naively, I thought I can avoid all the problems. I can make the perfect environment, the perfect engineering team. Well, I guess I have much more respect for these big companies because I know how complicated they can be. But I think I got a few things right.
You wouldn't be running a business for 13 years if you wouldn't have made good decisions, isn't it? So let's go into it. I mean, it's very interesting you mentioning this, going like, I had this vision before I actually started the business that I can do so much better. And then once you actually went on the journey, you were like, okay, right. So my views are changing now. It's not that easy. So you've been doing this for 13 years. I mean, you're doing something right? So talking about business resilience, David, it's like that would be my very first question. How did you manage to get the business running for 13 years? It's like, did you talk about, some business modules, about resilience? How do you live through the market dips and ups and all of that?
It's interesting you mentioned resilience. It's something that me and the other founders of CarWow haven't thought about at the beginning. We developed resilience purely by the fact that when we started, we didn't have any money at all. And it took us 2 years to get to the point where we could focus on CarWow full time and pay the bills with it. So that's where we got our first investment. So we started from, I guess failure was the default in a sense. So when later into the business we encountered our first dips through the market and so forth, I think as founders we were like, yeah, this is fine, this is normal. we can cope with that. But at the time, that's when we noticed that not everyone was built that way. And you really, when business do well, everyone is happy, everyone is positive. When you start hitting your first hurdles, when you don't hit revenue growth for the first time, for example, that's when you notice that people that don't have the resilience, the positivity, either just give up, or worse, they become negative influence for the rest of the organization, the culture. To the point we decided then that point to add positivity to our company values after that. It probably was the only time that I felt I didn't want to go to work was during those time, but not because of the challenge, because of the few people that were really dragging my energy down. That's quite interesting. So I think you have to be resilient. In 10 years, there's ought to be a recession or something. It's impossible to grow on and on without challenges. So I think it is an important part of the founders. And again,
So
I
do you
always mention
think
to others. Yeah, sorry.
do you think strategically about resilience, David? Or so the beginning was, as you say, you were young in the business, so effectively the resilience just came from the fact that you were a founder and you were just grinding forward, just taking all the challenges along the way and knocking them down. But then eventually, you become a more mature business. Do you sit down and you go like, let's see how our industry looks like, and let's see, what the next couple of years brings, and be strategic about how we can build resilience? Or is it more on like case by case situations where you are in a situation and you just then think then?
I think we were lucky just before COVID. We were thinking about business resilience rather than your personal resilience. Because there's been a few up and downs in the new car market. Our core business started purely on new cars. This was our niche. But then you are subject to, ups and downs of the new car market, and you can't do anything about it. So the way we decided to gain control of it is, we ended up acquiring a business that was thriving during this period when the new car market wasn't doing well. So the business they used to call the reverse CarWow, where allow us to get people that want to sell a car, like private, to put it to auction to dealers. So we ended up doing that just before COVID. When COVID hit, the new car market got probably decimated due to miscalculation they've done. It was almost impossible to buy a new car. For a business that makes money out of buying a new car, fortunately, we managed to get this business that grew tremendously in that time, which balanced the loss of the other one. So that was probably the first time we systematically thought, okay, how do we compensate for when the market new cars doesn't do well?
Okay.
That thanks to our kind of at that time CEO, and now is the CEO of the company, it was a great move. Probably saved the company, actually. Yeah.
Was it calculated saving, a strategic saving, or was it more of a situation where it just happened? I mean, the acquisition plans were different, and then the COVID came, and you came out at the end actually in a good position. But that's situational, isn't it? Or do you think you made good decisions along the way?
I think there were, before COVID, the new car market, there were a few other kind of critical events that happened. One was the diesel scandal, another one was WLPT, where for the CEO coming from a new company thought, wait a second, we have lots of traffic, we are not monetizing really well, we are somewhat reliant on this new car market only. We don't have levers. So it was a strategic decision to add other revenue streams that really that worked well with the existing audience. And those really helped with step changes, I think, in growth and reliability. So at that time, we not only that type of part of the business improved, but we also now have a revenue stream based on media from manufacturer partners, things like that. And the three things together really allows for a better LTV, I guess, and more resilience.
Okay, I like that. Just adding more streams, which actually aligns to your core proposition.
Yeah,
Just diversifying effectively your business and making more resilient.
yeah,
So I want to take back to one note you made in the beginning, where you said for about 2 years you were going until you actually reach a point where you can go full time.
yeah.
That's a like a founder personal resilience, and I think a lot of founders and entrepreneurs starting their ventures, they actually underestimate the amount of work and energy and for how long
It
that
takes.
will continue until they actually be able, make a full time of this. Can you just give us a little bit of a flavor of like emotional setup to go through those 2 years and not be able to go full time? How you managed, the income balance between your work and the time for the CarWow, and yeah, just how did it feel?
Well, I think I had a good plan in terms of career wise. Early in my career, I always optimized for places where I would learn a lot rather than necessarily get more money. I think I mentioned ThoughtWorks. ThoughtWorks was for me the place I wanted to work at because it was famous for lots of famous engineering books, writers were worked there, uh, great people to work with. It was hard work, wasn't highly paid, but it was a great environment where I built good relationships. And so I always optimize for that. And at one point, because of that experience, I realized, wait a second, now I could become an independent contractor and probably earn double the money. Yeah. So I did my calculation. Instead of saying, okay, let's earn double the money, it's great, very comfortable, I decided, let's try to stick to the same salary. And to do that, I just need to work 6 months a year. So I've invested. That instead of reaping the results straight away, effectively I've invested. It's like I was investing half of my salary in a sense into my startup ideas. So I started my own thing first just to see. I would take maybe a contract for 3 months, work in the evening for things, then 3 months of focus. And then I met the other founders of CarWow and I joined them. And we followed that formula, me working in the evening, which is tough, obviously, at the start, and taking time off between contracts. It was quite flexible because sometimes you go through a period in startups where actually the next bit is just waiting a bit, growing the audience, talking to investors rather than needing to build new features necessarily. So we're kind of flexible around that.
Okay. I do. I mean, personally, I can resonate with that very easily. Like, it's very hard to be full time on work or in a position and
Yeah,
then, say to yourself, I'm going to be working in the beginning before the workday or after it or in the weekends. That
it's
just
unsustainable.
zaps energy very, very quickly. Yeah, it's just unsustainable. So you need to think about how you're going to make time or how you can buy time. And, for me personally, I usually buy time, meaning that I take, salaries and I will pay someone else to get my things done and get my visions developed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So you did very, very, correctly. You basically find a way to make time and then put that time into your venture. How did you meet other founders? Because we have popular things in UK where we have services and networking events where people can go in and try to seek out the founders. What was your journey of founding your friends?
Well, interesting. I did attend a few hackathons and things like that to speak to people. At the time, though, I found that the majority of the ideas I really didn't like. It was early 2011. There were a lot of let's do a social network for this, let's do a social network for that. I'm in a sense, in terms of both technology and type of business, a bit conservative to an extent. So I ended up resonating a lot more with the idea of James, which is simply, hey, the car market is very old, really difficult to buy a car. Let's say cars online. It's very concrete idea. It's just that it's hard to do, but it's not out there completely, completely innovative in a sense. The way I met them actually though, happened through contacts, through networks. James, the founder of CarWow, he was emailing just random CTOs in London because he realized, building something like CarWow without a technical co-founder really hard. They spent a lot of money on agency, it took ages, it really didn't go well. So he was asking for advice, plus, do you know anybody? One of them, at the time, was the CTO of Wiggle, bike e-commerce website. He was the first person I worked with when I moved to UK. And obviously, developing his relationship, he was sure where I was working, and he mentioned my name. So again, building on good networks really help. And then we just met for coffee. I love the fact it was a simple idea. I love the fact that James was going out and calling people, which is exactly what I needed to complement my skills, because I'm not good at selling. But it was bringing something. It wasn't just the founder with an idea, which is, I always say, you can't just bring an idea. Everyone can have an idea. What is your skill set? And he was bringing. He was good at selling, and he ended up being able to raise money even if he didn't do it before because of that.
That's a good synergist, isn't it? And I think it's a highly overlooked setup when you think about founders. You want to complement each other and build a full bundle to actually be able to kick off the business, where I see often the mistakes being done, where tech founder meets another tech founder, so they wipe from each other. It's all about technology, and then they go ahead and build something, and then, well, how are you going to put this on the market? Like, how are you going to sell this? And that lack of skills suddenly, puts that idea to nothing, really. Mm. Okay, so that's a... Yep.
I say the compatibility is crucial in terms of skills. Obviously, of personality will end up working, but there's, I would say, building the product, selling the product, at very least, this minimal skill at the start are essential.
Yeah. Build it, market, sell it. That's like your three main pillars, which you want to have it in your founder setup. So you did mention having, went through those phases where you had very, minimal or lack of energy, or the energy is getting zapped because of, some toxic people within the business. I would presume that these weren't the founders, but can you give us a flavor of how that situation looked like and how you guys resolved it?
I guess the time when the energy was sucked from me was solved in a sense itself, because this type of individual then don't last well in period of crisis. So I think some of them left just by their own accord, and then we managed to solve the problems. The economy came back, whatever, and it was fine again.
Okay, so it's just
I mean, that's negativity caused kind of lack of energy. Other lack of energy, I think, is normal. We go through cycles, and again, for me, I played the whole startup thing not like you see in the movies, so people just working every day 24 hours. I know this would be a marathon, occasional sprints, but I'm trying to maintain a sustainable pace, something that I felt was right for me, which it can be different depending on the individual, but I needed to be there for years. So I made sure that, first of all, my role was interesting as well. Sometimes startup CEO find themselves in a job they don't like anymore. Which I tell them, hey, you're a founder. Figure out how you provide value to the company and make that your job. Hire somebody else to cover other areas you think you're not as strong at. So I think that was helpful.
Was that a realization you sort of reach yourself, or was that an advice you've been given? When it comes to that,
Yeah.
if you don't like it, find someone who does that, and just make sure you find your own strength for the business and do that.
I think as many CTO, I reached a point where I was fairly technical. I wanted to be hands-on, like building products, but then got to the point where we had maybe 10 engineers, and the people management side of things, hiring was becoming a large part of my time. So fortunately, I was self-aware enough. I said, I'm not happy with this. Let me research. So I think I've done a Google search and found a few articles around when is the time to hire a VP of engineering or things like that say, okay, this doesn't have to be like that. My strength is in the technology side, projects. Let me focus on that. Let me find someone that really thrive on the people management side of things. At the same time, I knew that was important. I wasn't trying to just ignore that part, because probably everyone experienced it, working in a company with a bad manager and so forth. So I wanted my mission to great work environment meant that I want to really invest in people. But I found a right hand that was better than me at it and made me better manager. Something that obviously at some point you still need to get good at. As a leader, the people side of things become more and more important.
Absolutely. And I love how you did that in a self-reflection, way. Because some founders fail to really see what they're not really good at, and they still try to do everything, which is, again, it just leads to burnout, zaps your energy, you start losing willpower to grind forward, which is, always a grind in the beginning. So that's a good example of sitting down and sort of reflecting back and going like, I'm in this situation, how can I improve the situation, rather than trying to just battle through the situation. Okay, so you mentioned acquisition as well, David. I know this is disruptive to some extent to businesses, because you're acquiring other business. Firstly, it's a big investment you're making, so you have a lot of things to go through, which is time-sucking exercise, and then you get this new business, and you get the people as well. How do you merge that? How does your organization chart changes? How do you bring people together? Is it this office, at that office? Do we go remote? And there's so many big questions to really answer when you're doing an acquisition. In your perspective, how did that whole process went, and what were, would you say, like the major learnings of that process?
I guess the process, I would say, went relatively well. In terms of business, we were able to take the product from technology point of view. We were able to then fully make it part of our code base within 12 months. But we were also able to ship value, like increase the value of that from week one. We went from a business that was doing 1 million revenue a year. That part of business now closed last year around 16. So in 2.5 years. So it's pretty big. So happy from that point of view. I think the challenge was more on the cultural side. A lot it was tough to integrate with them. Partly because it was an early stage startup with a bit of a laddish culture, where probably fine when you're 20 people and know each other, but didn't integrate well when you are now integrated in a company of 150 to 100. So there were a few challenges there when we had our first parties together, things like that. So we are now much more aware of this cultural integration. People teams in CarWow really keep an eye on this side of things early on. We are aware of the time sink than it is. So make sure that after you acquire a company, your people team, your legal team, it could be very busy.
Okay, so outside of business, the main challenge you guys had is actually our culture differences or a cultural clash, simply because your organization were a lot more matured compared to the startup you acquired. So for them, it was, acquisition is final. And suddenly, you walk from this one room, which is your startup, which is, totally different colors, into this different room like the next day, right? And it's just like, whoa, that's different. That's a lot of difference. And that change management or that change is, is often quite difficult, for people. And I think everybody who goes through merger and acquisitions is literally on the same boat. How do you, manage that? Did you had any attrition, in that situation? Like, did a lot of people sort of just, dropped off during the acquisition, or was it all just healthy that,
Not
you
straight
took the whole
away.
business?
Some of the leadership there ended up leaving, but at the same time, some of the people from that company now they are really great part of CarWow and they lead the areas. So again, depends a lot on the individual.
Mhm.
I think we're lucky because a lot of the culture is still there. We now maintain the office there. The people that kind of were more compatible with our culture stayed and thrived. So I think
Okay,
it sorted itself out.
that's quite
Um,
cool.
yeah,
So talking
but
about cultures,
yeah.
yep.
No, I'm saying you shouldn't be um, scared of saying, you know what, these people don't match culturally. We cannot have them here. You know, so if you have a well-defined principles, you have the framework to be able to make the decisions. Because sometimes it's hard, because you see a salesperson and yeah, they're selling, they're bringing revenue. So I say, come fire them. But if their behavior should be part of their performance, yeah. If you have well-defined principle and how to establish it, how to give feedback, and they don't improve, then you need to send them away if necessary. Because again,
Uh,
they will upset everybody else and have a negative impact in the organization.
I do agree with you, David. There, if there's a cultural mismatch, and it might maybe sound like a cliche, especially when you're going, through this interview process. It's like, oh, you want a cultural match, and you stop interviewing, but it's a very real thing from a, from a leadership and management perspective, because you have a vision of the environment you're trying to create, and the environment is based on people and people behavior. So it's very often that people are just not for your environment. Talking about cultures, can you give us a flavor of how does Carval culture looks right now?
How culture looks on now? I have my values booklet here.
There you go.
So I have it always on my desk. Um, I guess again, I mentioned the start. Part of the reason to start a company for me, I wanted to create the right environment for me as well. So I'm very happy with the culture. The key, I think, differentiator for us is we are highly collaborative. And what I don't just say is we like helping each other. And whenever new people come from other companies, they always mention it. So, oh my God, this is true. So many people stop what they're doing and work. And this is possible because we make sure that the team's objectives and personal objective align well. Because often companies, even by mistake, create disalignment in the organization. So people are not incentivized to help another department, for example, because, oh, why should I spend time on that? I'm going to miss my target. We are trying to organize the organization in a way that, hey, if you're helping the department and we help the whole organization, you thrive. So that really helps. So collaborative, and we're trying to be. As mentioning the values that are not as common. I think humble is one that not every company has. The people that we want to learn from our mistakes. We want to not be arrogant of with others in general. And I think it's a really important value to be able to constantly learn, have the ability to improve. So yeah, just a bunch of positive, humble people. Some of the decision we made early on, I mentioned I had to work sometime in the evening, early days, or between contracts. So for us, it was extremely important to make sure not to work on things that didn't matter. Extreme prioritization, breaking down things in small steps that can be achieved and celebrated are a big part of our culture, and still is. And I think it comes from the early days of way of working.
This sounds great, David. It's like, I want to work there. Do you have openings?
Yes.
It's a good, definitely a good, I mean, first you start with a vision. You need to understand what culture you want to create, and then you just move towards that. I really like the helping each other. I think it's so highly overlooked, and you very rightfully mentioned that when people get busy, they tend to not help each other, and it's just what happens by default. Like, you have your main priorities, your main responsibilities within the role, and if you are being capped out at this, like, you're just not gonna have time to go ahead and help that. And streamlining that process, as you guys doing with alignment, is such a great strategic positioning. It does help tremendously to just lift up everybody up, and you can hire as well more maybe junior people, and make that your culture will bring them up, which is great setup. I do want to touch on innovation. So culturally speaking, people tend put something on a table which drives either decision velocity, or just allows people to go and fail, and just play with different things, just innovate in the industry you're competing in. And you've been doing this for 13 years, so you're clearly doing something right in that space. Can you talk a little bit how you guys make sure you're innovating?
I don't know if you're very good at innovating, actually. It's something that we're trying to get better at. Again, probably because of the way kind of me and the early founders used to work. We weren't the super visionary type of founders. We say, oh, yeah, we're going to change the industry, and had this clear long-term vision. We were pretty much, okay, this is our car line. What's the next step? Okay, let's try to sell 10 cars. So a vision
Baby
was
step.
pretty much, okay, that. And next step, okay, great. Sold 10 cars. Let's sell 100 cars. So the vision expanded as we moved further into our path. Now that we feel like, okay, now we have a possibility really to build that vision a bit more clearly and bigger. Now we do a bit more of that. But it's really difficult to innovate in startups when you have always maybe 6 months, 7 months to provide that next level of growth. So I didn't feel we were innovative. We were constantly improving, but I don't think we're bringing something complete. Well, I think it was easier in the sense of our industry because no one was doing anything in it. It was, there's very little innovation happened. So the very little we're providing was enough. Until it's not, though. I think the constant improvement is great at the start, because a lot of the growth come from maybe adding more makes, adding more supply, and so on. At some point, you reach a point where you got all the supply you can with that product, and that's when you need to start bringing the big step changes. And I think that's a part where we didn't grow as fast because we didn't invest in the bigger bets. But we got a little bit better at that. But I think you need to think very systematically about, yes, you need a lot of short-term bets, but figure out where you feel comfortable, but you need to have the one longer-term bet always going.
Okay. So this is coming with time then for CarWow. Like, initially, effectively, you just had a very short-term visions or short-term goals, and then when you became just more financially stable and just big as an organization, you started looking at the much longer visions and feel how can you drive this through innovation. Okay, that makes perfect sense, and I'm happy you guys were able to sort of do this.
I think you have to absolutely have to, because otherwise the growth stagnates at some point.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. You have to compete, otherwise you just fall behind. As simple as that. So when you grow quickly, and I presume you guys grew very quickly, because you mentioned you went from 1 million something in like 16 in like 2 years. It was driven by
That was
merger and
one part
acquisition
of
of
the business. Yeah.
it's still, huge jump. So with that speed, usually, scalability requirements forget about quality, and you just go like, okay, well, we just went from, a very simple number to a very big number, and now we need to sustain all of this, and quality goes through the door quite often in technology. How did you guys manage the scaling challenges with quality?
Interestingly, for one of our principle, I guess, for engineering is try not to code. It probably was one of the drivers, because the more stuff you build, the more mess you need to maintain and so on. So for us is to be scrappy. Instead of writing lots of scrappy code, we were questioning writing code at all most of the time until we really learn about something. Just to give you an example, the core bit of CarWow is the fact you configure a car and then you receive offers for that car automatically from dealers. So these offers are calculated based on the discounts the dealers put on, any offers and so on. But for a long time, because we didn't have this scale, those offers were manually entered by one of our salespeople that made a spreadsheet, and he was doing that for a while. And it was fine. It was much better than trying to write a code. We were able to get to that quickly. Allow us to learn, wait a second, yes, for Mercedes, discount is calculated way, but Vauxhall is a completely different way, and then it's a different way. So we were able to learn fast, completely avoid coding, so we're able to do other stuff. And when the time came that, hey, we're spending 4 people doing this manually with too many new customers, we can't sustain that. At that point, we automated it with more certainty. So we ended up with better code, fewer rewrites, and just maintain the quality. So for us, it's always challenging the need for writing code, first of all. And when we had to write code, we were uncertain. I think there are a few techniques that they allow you to write good code still, but quickly. I had this idea of making sure that if you're writing messy code, make sure it's all in one place. So architecturally, we try not to spread mess across multiple classes. If you know something is messy and you're sure, you're better off having one complicated thing that at one point you can delete or rewrite, that rather than have a complex architecture or something like that. Keep things simple. But I think sometimes you also need to question a bit of discipline on engineers, because we hide behind the fact, we are going fast, doesn't matter. But there are a few simple things that don't cost you any time, really, in developing. It's just a matter of discipline that make that maintainability, scalability of your code much easier. Like, sorry if I get a bit technical, but for example, breaking down,
Go for it.
make sure your code is readable, give proper names to things. It doesn't take that long when you're coding. As you're thinking, you can rewrite. It's more around discipline. And we were able to do that. And we still have the same code base, in a sense, that I wrote, that obviously evolved. But we never had to go and do, oh my God, we need to rewrite this, is impossible to use. We had the discipline to improve a little bit every time, make sure it's readable, simple. Yes, occasional mess happen. We will rework later, but nothing major. And still, The focus is you go faster, not by writing faster code, is by removing things that are not necessary. We waste our life coding things that don't matter, For example, how many startups build their own infrastructure and stuff they don't need? Just use off-the-shelf service that give you deployment one click. Stuff like that. Focus on your differentiator rather than building stuff that you can buy or download.
That's such a strong shout, David. And I remember myself, I went in the company and there was a situation where they were constantly spending time and maintaining a very legacy code, which was responsible for just creating thumbnails for uploaded images, and I'm like, why we even have this code liability? There's already services which does that professionally with all the distribution capabilities. Just take the
Paying for
API
something.
integrate. Yeah, and it's just like it's such a simple buy versus build type solution, because you writing thumbnail management code is like, that's not gonna help you sell your product, right? That's not your offering at all, unless you actually are the
That's software.
asset, yeah, upload and distribution type of software, right? So that's a very good strategic decision, is just asking that question: should we even be writing this in the first place? And then discipline wise, is it just like a cultural element where you take people through that onboarding process and you explain them that this is how we do it, or do you have some type of like a maybe static code analysis enforcement towards what is an acceptable level of quality of code which goes into production?
Early days, we had, I think it's more cultural, reviews. I was lucky that my early team, kind of first few engineers, were very experienced. I never bought an idea of having lots of junior developers early on. So I was surrounding myself with experience, what people on board, were invested in the company. And that made my life easier, obviously, because everyone was reviewing code, giving feedback, and then the culture spread. They understand the importance, and we celebrate when we delete code. They say, by the way, we found a new off-the-shelf software now. It was a real thing that takes care of moving data from our data warehouse to third parties. And we were writing loads of code to do this stuff. Boring, error prone. We found the software. Now we're deleting code and celebrating. Because every developer enjoy that, because we hire people that are not there just to write code. They have joy when they can have an actual economic impact to the company. So I think that's important in startup. You need to find people that enjoy technology as a tool to achieve change and impact with people or the business, rather than code for code's sake.
That's a good OKR to have. How many code lines did you delete it without, negatively impacting the code base? It's just like, let's just
do that. I did it last year. We tracked it. We managed to. I don't think we're going to be able to achieve a game. Still add lots of functionality, but we ended up overall with a few lines of code last year. So
did you employ AI like Copilot or any sort of coding help which you can get with AI to potentially look at some legacy corners of your system and go like, can we just improve that somehow?
We started a test of Copilot with a few developers, which they enjoyed it, but I didn't hear oh my God, this is life-changing experience. But I suspect it's because of the technology we use. We tend to have a lot, again, because we bring a lot of libraries in, don't trying to write code that has been written already. In a sense, we don't have some of the challenges that other companies have, where the automation with AI helps more. So I'm not sure we are reaping all the benefits of that. We do use for refactoring sometimes. Sometimes it's really good to say, hey, I have this module, it's a bit complicated. How can we make it more readable? Ask the question directly to ChatGPT. It was pretty good.
Yeah. There's some value in it. I get it. But at the same time, you cannot really come out and understand you so deeply, in the sense like, I have this open source library which maybe you don't even know about, and this one, and I want to bake a business value solution. It's probably gonna not deliver on that.
Not yet.
Compared to something like write me a unit test, which it's a different
that was the biggest
task.
benefit. It makes it easier. Think about edge cases, kind of stuff that you need to think anywhere. So that was good for that.
Okay. Right. So we went a little bit deeper into your teams. How do you make sure your talent attrition is low?
Interesting, and that's probably one thing I'm most proud of. is the retention of our engineering team. I think our median now is almost 3 years, and we have lots of people. I mentioned these people from the start. So people have been with us 10 years, 9 years, 7 years. So I think, first of all, it's good people management. So we had very early on dedicated engineer managers that the objective wasn't technology, was focus on people. So make sure that they were heard, feedback addressed, they would help them learn and grow, have a career path. I think, we constantly score really, really high on our engagement surveys related to that. So that has been key, because then a lot of the initiative related to that, I can get the engineer manager to run them. The other part is, I think, a good quality, establish a good level of craft in your code. No one likes to work in a terrible code base. And I think I was being passionate about that. The engineers in my team see that, and so they understand they are in an environment where we care about craft as well. That's been quite motivating. And the third bit is the fact that they can see they can have an impact. So we are very close to the rest of the business. They enjoy the part. They can reach, or they changes that can have an impact from day one. Even a junior developer could work on something that then 10 million people see. I think that's pretty important for motivation.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think these three for us has been crucial part. And I keep my libraries up to date. I think always advise no one ever thinks to keep the frameworks and language up to date. And then all of a sudden you're like 2-3 versions behind and people get frustrated and leave.
Oh, yes. 100%. It's so annoying, and you cannot utilize the updates of the of the package or framework or library you're using. It's like you fall behind. The library is moving forward, right? They're doing better. They're fixing bugs and they're adding new things.
Yeah.
And then you're just behind, and you're like, oh, I can't update this because we made some mistakes and all of that. And I remember one role, which is a real situation. It's like, it was like 9 years business, a startup as well, which became, a business, and they never went to address their, technical sort of issues. And they ended up with this code base where no one wanted to work with. So they would hire someone and people would just leave 3 months later because they would be like, you guys like 5 years behind the market. Like, I don't want to work with code like that. Like, I don't want to work with tools like that. Exactly. So it's a very, very important, that piece about the craft and caring about what you guys produce at the code level. That's such a strong cultural, vision or element, which works quite well. What about
as well? I think is that maintaining it doesn't take that long to do that if you do it too regularly, but then it becomes a massive undertaking if you go 3 versions behind. So we start from Ruby, Rails 2, 3. And we are on the latest at the moment, always updated whenever there were a major release version. And Ruby the same. We went from 1.8 to 3.2 now. Yeah. So kept that up to date and pays off. People stay.
Yep, definitely. It's a very good strategic setup. Whatever processes you guys have, as long as you automate this to an extent, it gives wonders. It's such a simple thing, when you think about it.
But it can have tremendous negative impact if you don't care about it.
Exactly. It can grow to big problems. So, what's your take on one factor? So, just in the spirit of the show, we have this question: is like, what is one thing in your view most important to any technical venture growth?
One factor, I think, probably need to be making sure, are you working on something that has an impact? Why you do something is crucial. You always need to know why. You might not have certainty of it, but there need to be a clear why. I saw so many startup founders that are like, we're redesigning the website. So, why are you redesigning the website? Just this is going to magically fix your business. Uh, Things like that. There's this, you hide behind busyness, I guess. You know,
Business. Mm.
yeah. It's really bad. People work really hard and late for no reason because you're working on things that don't matter. You're better off working 8 hours, but make sure, yeah, you know why you're doing something. It might not work, fine, but at least you need to be able to know, explain to the rest of your company. Also, the leadership comes from that you want to bring people with you on the journey, and need to clarify. Okay, we're doing work. You are working hard. We're asking you to work late. Why? Understand there's value in this, and this will make a change. If you have
I
that,
love that.
it's crucial, I think.
Yeah, just go through 5 why exercise.
Yeah,
Right? It's a very simple framework. Just ask the why 5 times, see where you end up with an answer. If you get stuck in the middle of these 5 whys, you probably don't have this nailed. Like you don't really know why you're doing this. And I call this bad busy. So when I talk with people, I go like, always founders goes like, oh, I'm very busy. Is it a good busy?
bet
Or is it
busy.
a bad busy, right? So you can be good busy, which means you're doing things which really matter. You're applying some type of framework, 5 whys, Pareto 80-20 principle, but you're really nailing what exactly you need to be doing to advancing your business forward. And bad busy, you just, as you said, you just hide behind business. Like you're just doing everything, and you're doing things which you probably should be delegating to someone and concentrating on what you can really put the value in the business and advance the business. Okay, I love that. So make sure you know why you're doing things. That's
Yeah.
a good one factor, David. All right, so while with this in this topic now about the growth, how you keep speed going, like when you think about velocity of work, and we can take it maybe a little bit deeper to team velocities, engineering velocity, or a little bit higher, look at the whole business, where you combine the product and the sales and everything. But how do you get that speed to a certain point of how you ship value and maintain that speed?
Interesting. Before speed, again, going back to the why, making sure
Mm.
you're going the right direction is crucial. Because often, yeah, see, we're going really fast, but again, we build something that doesn't work, doesn't matter, or so. As long as you're confident you're working the right thing, then speed matter. And I guess my personal trick has always been around scope control of any project. Or I guess mention the 80-20 Pareto principle. You can go as fast as you want as a developer, but most of my speed comes from removing things. You know what? This, maybe let's do it later. And so you get the sense of getting to value faster and shipping something. So I had an obsession for that, probably also because of short attention span, but always trying to get to the core value shipped and deployed and deferring what can be deferred. And I think the advantage of that is there's also psychological. As soon as you do that, you can really concentrate on the one thing. You have less to think about. You're automatically more focused. And then you get the nice reward for, ship something. Oh, you're getting customers to use it. People say, maybe someone in the company say thank you to you. It's quite pleasant experience. It relaxes you, and then it pushes you to work harder next time. So I found that motivation pattern for me works really well, and I'm trying to get other engineers to work on it. I think that's where I find a good product manager really can help, because it's not just the code sometimes, it's not just the knowledge bit, it's the whole go-to-market and wider business also, that we can waste a lot of time on stuff that we could defer. Maybe we can launch this product just to a segment. Let's start with a small segment and launch it. and then we do the next bit. So by not needing to think about the rest, your brain has more space to move faster. So scope, I think, is the key to speed.
To speed.
For any role, I think. Then again, for engineers, there is a lot of push to do more with your engineers at the moment. Given that there's less investment going around, probably the time of teams of thousands of engineers are gone for a while. So I think that's still important. And so I spend a lot of time around organization structure. Is often, again, the time is not the coding bit is slow, is the decision making or reworking an idea, something wasn't clear. So how do we make sure we put the right people together that they can do the most decision quickly without bureaucracy, without needing to wait for others? Whenever we look at the team that slow down, most often is the lack of clarity of what to build. That's what causes the most slowness. And then another thing is really important to keep an eye on is the whole reliability of the system, bugs and so on. Anytime you get a bug, a question because your system is complicated, or a person within the business doesn't know how it works, it slows down. So I have a metric now for you were trying to track is how often we get interrupted by questions or bugs. And we have processes around to make sure that not everybody needs to be aware of it. So every squad in my company have the distractible person we have on a rota. So we know one person will get the burden of distraction. It's fine. But then the others can really stay focused and work. Attention to that is important. Where to put meetings, deleting meetings are not necessary, creating nice long space of time where people can work. And then going back to the people's time, a lot of external factors can really mess up with the developer productivity. Every time someone has to move something at home, we notice that really, really slow them down. So as a company, we invest in therapy support. We have kind of some services that you can, not therapy, but they call it counseling, I guess. Good holidays, make sure that, avoid burning out. A lot of factors are not technology in a sense. Then technology is great. One thing we're doing recently is trying to simplify technology using one programming language, for example, trying to avoid complicated front-end, separate front-end if not necessary. Those things really help as well.
Yeah, these are great. And yes, it is much higher than going deeper to processes and tech when it comes to enabling speed. And all they mentioned is just on point. I want to take us back to the very first one, which is the scope. And I do like that flip notion of like what to think, not about what you should be doing, but to actually think much stronger of what you should not be doing. As a result, keeping it lean. How does the customer feedback play into that decision? It's like, do you guys talk with the market? Do you have your main clients from which you source the ideas on, what you should be concentrating, or is it more from like internal views?
I think it depends on what area of the product we're changing. There are parts of CarWow that are very much customer kind of retail focused. Others that are for our supply side of the market, or dealership, brokers. So the feedback loop can be different. Obviously, we have a continuous research. So we're researching now 2 people, not massive, but they're really good and they really can summarize the key pain points. And they help us building more of a vision rather than give you the solution, I think. Say, hey, there is a problem there. This is a top problem. And we use that to focus our attention. The solution comes typically from the teams themselves, sometimes even execs. Exec in particular area might have a good idea, more than a feature, a strategy, I would say, a strategy approach. This is how we're going to solve this. So the type of work can come from feedback from customer execs themselves for more strategic decisions, and the teams themselves, obviously. The problems either obvious come from customer support. Actually, a great source of it. We part of it, the work of the researcher is analyze the problems mentioned by customer support. And our dealers are also our account manager and salespeople. They run interviews regularly with their clients. I'm gonna say, hey, tell me about how you're finding it, and they write summaries on this, they share, and they're a great source of inspiration. But you use this information, you don't ask people how to solve it for them. Then that you develop your intuition as a product leader, for example, or an area, and come up with ideas to test. And then we test.
Yep, that's a very organic approach.
Yeah.
How do you capture data? So, in general, would you say that you are data-driven decision making, or is it more like organic decision making? So, meaning that data-driven would be you talked with customer success, but you put it in, maybe you crunch the numbers, you look at sentiments, around some topics, research wise, maybe you look at the global market, maybe you buy into like global reports, which you then try to digest, and you are data driven, or is more of like organic way of just talking with customers?
I'll mention something. For me, data has always been important. Again, one of my principle was I didn't want to work in a company where the person with the loudest voice would make decisions. But we phrase it slightly differently, because sometimes the lack of data causes paralysis for some people. So I'm going to read you something from the booklet of our values. One of our values is effective, and part of it is an area about data. It says that we use data to inform decisions, but we feel able to make them with imperfect data. I don't like data driven, because it's almost make you unable to make decision without data. And data comes in different forms. I think is, yes, quantifiable data, great when you have it, but people having conversation with their clients and developing empathy for their problems, it's valuable data, and you need to be able to listen to that. And if you have numbers detailing exactly the problem, great, use that. If you don't, let's speak to an expert, a salesperson, have a conversation. Otherwise, make an informed decision. You should be working in automotive for a while. We can have a good attempt at it. As long as you know why you're doing that thing, you have a clear problem in mind, then sometimes you don't need that much data to make a decision.
Okay. So there's a unofficial decision velocity which you guys care about. It's just don't dwell too long. Just make a call, commit, and just make sure you know why you're doing this. But just make a call, commit, and get that.
We can still learn afterwards, as long as you can measure whether the decision is good or not. I think that's crucial for us. Are you gonna know if this was good or not? Because then it's problematic if you can't.
So do you tend to define success metrics before you go after big initiatives?
Yes, absolutely. Because without, even if it's a statement, sometimes it's difficult. It's again that feeling. It's rare we do this stuff, but occasionally we could be working on something that harder to measure apart from interviewing lots of dealership and how you feel about that. Because a lot of this stuff add up and improve, for example, your retention or your supply side. But it's not one thing. So you need to really develop the empathy and conversation and have confidence around that. Those are the toughest ones. The user-facing one for us are the easiest, because there are 10 million users. We can really test. We know for sure if things are good or not. We might not know why, then we still need to talk to them. But at least we know the impact of any product change on that side.
Okay. I want to touch on regulations, because I feel like you guys are so big and you are in the industry, which I feel should have some type of regulations. Like, do they have any impact on your business? Maybe this is just me not knowing, the industry well enough, but do you have a regulations which you need to follow, which affects your product development?
So we are FCA appointed, so we need to be very careful of things around, especially things around pricing, financing, and so on. So we have lightweight process on that. I don't think it slows down too much. The other one is obviously something that affects most business now is GDPR regulations. Especially when it came, I think we went overly trying to follow all the rules exactly, and it cost us business-wise. And then we reverted all the stuff because we were full on perfectly aligned to the regulation, and everybody else in competitors wasn't as far in that. Wait a second. So I think there is a risk that a legal team in a company say, "Oh, this is the law. We need to follow the law." But unless we are talking about criminal stuff, you need to be careful because some stuff are a recommendation. Look, there is a risk. Yeah, how comfortable we are with that risk, and we're trying to make sure we challenge back and look for a better solution rather than quietly say, "Oh, legal say that we need to do it." No, let's challenge. Let's figure out what the competition is doing. Let's get other advice. I think, yeah, it can be extremely impactful negatively, I guess, a legal team that is just forceful in the organization. And if you don't have a culture of challenging and understanding why you're doing stuff. But we managed to avoid the biggest problem so far because we're not taking payments, which is something I'm trying to defer as much as possible. So.
I love the challenge piece because at the end of the day, the legal team is that's their job, right? They want to be perfectly aligned to all the legal frameworks which surround the business. But as you rightfully mentioned, there's a leeway or a range in which you can operate and still be legally, compliant with whatever regulations you have. And it comes down to just a risk assessment. Do we have a risk here? Are we exposed? Can we manage it? And just wait and, make a trade-off between are we actually need to do things, or can we just sort of, have a conversation about this? And would you say with the CarWow, like, was this like a gradual process where you got exposed to it eventually, and then you needed to sort of deal with this, or were you starting to think about, regulations and things before you actually embark in a project?
No, to start with, we weren't worried about regulation at all. Again, the risk of the impact of fines and so on, so minimal comparing to just failing as a startup. As you become more established, then it becomes important. Your future investors do look at the stuff, do look at these risks, and want to make sure you're doing things properly. I guess security is a similar thing. Most stuff doesn't matter. But then, okay, we got 5 million customer record here. Let's make sure we are having regular pen tests, make sure we are doing the right things.
Okay. Can you approach...
One more thing about regulation. We need to be careful, though. There's, I think, both for security and regulation, there is just making sure you're not getting fined. The other one is actually doing the right thing for your customers. So I challenge the decision where I, for example, see, look, I can see this is, as a customer, someone buying a car, I find that seeing the price like that is very clear. Why do we need to follow that exact thing the FCA is saying about this? Let's challenge it because we are not misleading. It's quite clear, it's a click away. We don't need to just take it on the page straight away. It's obvious. So stuff like that. When I act as a customer myself, I think I wouldn't be upset by this. This is fine. And that's why I challenge.
Put yourself in the customer's shoes.
Yeah.
See how that goes. Okay, I love that. Last question, David. If you would give an advice, or if you would share what you think is a good growth strategy implemented and you've seen that happening? Maybe it is CarWow, maybe it is, some other people, effectively an effective and successful growth strategy for a tech company?
I guess it depends a lot on the type of company. You can talk about things like CarWow in the marketplace or something.
Yeah, you can take CarWow's as an example. If you guys, did something at some point which effectively just propelled you up. Like if you think about growth curve, you just went from being very slowly organically growing to just exponentially shooting to the moon. Or, you have maybe other stories where, some decisions were made like that, just a use case effectively.
I think for us is finding ways to segment the market and improve growth on a particular vertical, whatever it is. I remember for things like Deliveroo, it was pick a city at a time, and make sure you can demonstrate that the business works really well in a small environment. For us, for example, was, hey, we're just gonna sell Volkswagen to start with because we go through dealers, and some people can find it really weird. So how can you build a website where you can select only one make? So you can just buy PPC traffic for Volkswagen terms and just put the landing page and just sell that, get your 3 dealerships. You don't need everything. Some people might find it really weird. How do you feel comfortable with that? It's fine. So extreme focus on how to develop the supply and demonstrate. That's how we got investment. We got 3 good dealers. We knew how much it cost the traffic to get in, positive returns. And then we could go to an investor with, hey, this can work. We need money to expand, to get more dealers, other brands, other locations. So they can do the math quite easily. They can say, okay, they did for that? Yeah, sure, they could be able to do for the other 40 makes and 20 cities or whatever. So yeah, find a way not to need to grow this massive supply or whatever to demonstrate there is value in your business.
Okay, I really love that. So, here's a strategy, to finish the show with is just extreme focus, right? You don't need to go big. Just find one thing you think you're solving a problem, make the easiest test you can. When there's a value, forecast, raise the money or go organic, but you don't need to go big to actually make it a successful tech venture.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you, David, for attending our show. I hope that was lovely. Everything you shared, it's tremendous value to the listeners. So thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mike.